Good evening and welcome back. If you are listening from a quiet corner of the world, perhaps beside a softly fading hearth, or within the deep stillness of a bedroom, please allow my voice to be a gentle guide tonight. We will not rush this journey. There is no urgency in the story we are about to share. Find your most restful position, allow your shoulders to soften, and your breath to gently deepen. Let the sounds outside the distant world, the worries of the day, all of it become a soft, low hum far away. Tonight, there is nothing for you to solve, nothing to resist. Simply allow your mind to drift back through time, following the quiet imposition of order upon the distant night, the slow, rhythmic beginning of the medieval town watch. My voice will be your soft anchor tonight, guiding you along the smooth, ancient rivers of time, where only the memory of predictable peace remains. Nothing in tonight's story will disturb your peace. Welcome this evening's stillness, this gentle moment where the day gives way to the deep, slow quiet of the night. Feel the gentle weight of the air around you, soft and unmoving, like silk draped across the horizon. With a long, soft breath, allow the rhythm of the evening to settle into the rhythm of your body. Let your breath become as quiet as the falling dusk, slow and deep, filling you with calm and releasing any lingering tension with the faintest whisper of air. Imagine yourself standing in a quiet square as the drifting light of the sun fades. Before you, a faint straight line disappears into the mist, an ancient myth-like cadence of intention. We are about to begin the story of the quiet guardians, tracing the origin of enduring nightly order. If these gentle journeys help you rest, you may leave a soft like or subscribe, only if it feels comforting and natural for your night. The quiet routine of the medieval town watch began long before the hour of true darkness. It commenced with the settling of the evening, marked by two deliberate rhythmic acts that signaled the gentle shift from the busy day to the controlled stillness of the distant night, the tolling of the curfew bell, and the heavy, slow closing of the town gates. Imagine the atmosphere as the sun dips below the roof lines, casting long, soft shadows across the cobblestones. The bustling sounds of the market, the low murmur of trade, the creak of carts begin to subside. Then a single deep note sounds from the bell tower, the first bell. This bell, often referred to as the ignatigium or curfew bell, was not a sound of alarm, but of organized warning. It was a gentle instruction for the townspeople to bank their fire's low embers and prepare for the night's quiet safety. The tolling of the bell was slow, measured, and profound, allowing the sound to travel through the narrow streets and echoing halls. It imposed a steady pace upon the town, signaling the moment for all domestic activity to retreat inward. The scent of cooking smoke, which had drifted across the rooftops all day, now diminished, replaced by the cool, clean air of the advancing twilight. Following the bell, the focus shifted to the closing gates. Medieval towns were often encircled by walls of quiet stone, and their security rested entirely on the integrity of the entrances. The gatekeeper's task was a slow, deliberate ritual of low-drama security. The heavy wooden gates, reinforced with iron, were swung inward with immense synchronized effort, their deep groan and scrape a final, audible farewell to the light. Once the wooden doors met, the sounds intensified, the rhythmic clang of the heavy iron bars being dropped into their massive stone sockets, and the final reassuring rattle of the keys as the keeper secured the massive locks. This physical act of sealing the town was a declaration of contained calm. The keys, often large and weighty, symbolized the physical transfer of authority from the daily government to the nightly watch. With the gates secured, the movement of people outside was restricted. Anyone inside knew they were now within a defined, protected space. The entire town entered a phase of organized stillness. The streets quickly emptied, and the only sounds remaining were the muffled voices of families settling in for the night and the soft, continuous presence of the faint wind moving over the rooftops. This deliberate rhythmic sequence, the bell's soft command, and the gate's deep close was the quiet beginning of the watch's long shift. It was the architectural and acoustic process that prepared the town for the necessary slumber, turning the complex activity of the day into a predictable, manageable space for the nightly guardians. The watch was ready to assume its promise of continuous, unwavering order in the dark. The necessity for the medieval town watch arose from a deeply felt, yet often unspoken condition of that era, the quiet fear of the dark. In the absence of artificial light and organized patrol, the distant night was not simply a period of rest, but a vast, unpredictable domain that required the presence of a gentle, active order to be made safe. Imagine the town immediately after the gates were sealed and the lantern glow of the shops faded. The darkness was absolute and profound, broken only by the mist, plus moonlight, filtering through the narrow, twisting streets. In this deep silence, the human imagination filled the voids, creating anxieties that needed a predictable, rhythmic countermeasure. The primary fear that necessitated the watch was the silent threat of fire. Medieval towns built tightly with wood thatch and narrow lanes were immensely vulnerable. A single spark from an untended hearth, a remaining low embers could quickly consume an entire quarter. The rapid spread of fire was a natural disaster that needed continuous organized vigilance far more than any human mischief. The watch was the town's nightly insurance policy against this elemental force. Their duty was not one of sharp conflict, but one of calm observation, checking that chimneys were cool, ensuring that fire buckets were full of water, and listening for the telltale crackle of a hidden ember. This routine was a ritual of safety, replacing the general sense of tension with the certainty of continuous care. A secondary, softer anxiety related to the unpredictable human element. While major violence was rare, the night sheltered those minor disturbances that threatened the low-drama peace of the community. The soft footsteps of those who might sneak into an unlocked storage shed, or the muted sounds of arguments carried from a hidden tavern. The watch existed to gently neutralize these small frictions, acting as a calm deterrent simply through their predictable, measured pace. The ancient roots of the watch system recognized that the collective town needed a soft anchor in the darkness. The presence of the watchman, marked by the rhythmic striking of their staff and the sound of their voice calling the hour, was not an intrusion. It was an acoustic reassurance. That sound, moving slowly through the echoing halls and streets, told the sleeping residents that an organized vigilance was in force, allowing them to truly surrender to rest. The watch's role was to transform the quiet fear of the dark into a state of organized stillness. They acted as a filtering mechanism, absorbing the minor disruptions and keeping them contained, ensuring that the vast majority of the population could enjoy a night free from stress. The gentle order they maintained was a service to public slumber, built upon the understanding that predictability is the deepest source of peace. The concept of the town watch, while essential to the medieval rhythm, did not emerge from a void. Its structure and very purpose carried the ancient roots of the patrol, tracing a lineage back to the organized, predictable presence established centuries earlier, particularly the Roman echoes in quiet stone. Imagine Rome in the deep silence of its imperial past, long before the medieval cities rose from its remnants. Even then, the necessity of a nightly organized presence was understood. The Romans maintained a dedicated force known as the vigiles urbani, the watchmen of the city. These were not soldiers, but men focused on the dual low-drama duties of firefighting and general peacekeeping during the distant night. The vigils established many of the principles that would later define the medieval watch: rhythmic rounds, fixed posts, and the duty to report fire. Their presence was a continuous, organized imposition of order upon the sprawling, complex city. They moved with a steady pace, their gentle footsteps echoing in the vast, empty public spaces, assuring the sleeping populace that the official vigilance remained unbroken. As the Western Roman Empire receded, the physical structures, the walls and roads remained, becoming the quiet stone framework for the emerging medieval towns. Along with this stone, the idea of the organized patrol persisted, albeit simplified and localized. The medieval watch often used the old Roman walls and towers as their fixed points, their duty stations built on the stable earth of ancient foundations. The soundscape of the medieval watch's rounds was thus an echo of the past. The rhythmic call of the Roman watchman, alerting citizens to the hour and the state of the city, transformed into the medieval watchman's call, serving the same function of acoustic reassurance. The sound carried by the soft wind over the rooftops was a continuous auditory anchor, linking the present safety to the long, unwavering order of history. The tools of the watch also carried this ancient memory. The Roman vigils used leather buckets and axes for their firefighting duties. The medieval watchmen, too, carried water buckets and a simple staff or pole. The change was not in purpose, but in material, a quiet transition from highly organized imperial logistics to simpler local community effort. The very notion of the town gates closing at a fixed time. The curfew was a long-standing tradition meant to contain the community and make the night manageable. This practice, established in many ancient systems, emphasized the transfer of control from the chaotic energy of the day to the controlled, organized stillness of the night patrol. The watchmen, moving through the narrow, twisting lanes of the medieval town, were following a path laid out centuries before, inheriting a silent tradition of continuous, calm observation. Their predictable presence was not an invention of their time. It was a revival of an ancient, successful method for transforming the vast, unknown territory of the night into a predictable, safe space for slumber. The ancient roots of the patrol provided the necessary blueprint for low-drama order, ensuring that the nightly routine was one of deep, rhythmic familiarity. The effectiveness of the nightly patrol was rooted not just in organization, but in the solemn internal commitment made by the men themselves, the humble oath of the watchman. This was a pledge to maintain vigilance, a promise of presence that guaranteed the town's nightly repose. The watchmen were often drawn from the local community, serving in rotation or as paid servants of the town council. Their duty was seen as a foundational act of civic maintenance, essential for the community's low-drama peace. Before their rounds began, they participated in a quiet, formal ritual of swearing the oath, often done in the dim light of the town hall. Imagine the small group gathering. The air is cool, and a single lantern glow catches the serious faces of the men. The oath was simple, focusing entirely on patience, vigilance, and routine. They promised to walk their prescribed circuits with gentle footsteps, to call the hours with a clear, steady voice, and above all, to remain awake and alert through the deep silence of the distant night. This oath was a commitment to rhythmic consistency. The town did not need heroes or sudden loud action. It needed the unwavering order of a predictable patrol. The watchman promised to be an acoustic anchor, a reliable external presence that marked the steady, safe passage of time. The very sound of his approach and the rhythmic strike of his staff on the quiet stone of the streets was a physical manifestation of his sworn word. The core of the promise was non-confrontation. The watchman's primary tools were not sharp weapons, but his warm breath to call the time and his eyes to spot the soft threat of fire. Any minor disturbance was to be addressed with calm authority, often resolved simply by the presence of his lantern glow or the clear statement of the hour. Their role was to gently contain chaos, not introduce it. The oath also encompassed a promise of social equity. The watchman was required to patrol all streets equally, from the grand square to the narrow, twisting alleyways. The security and the organized calm he brought were to cover every sleeping household, ensuring that the gentle order was universal. For the watchman, serving the night was a period of profound stillness and contemplation. Alone on the empty streets, under the mist, pale moonlight, he became acutely aware of the deep silence of the sleeping town. The rhythm of his patrol, the slow movement, the call, the check of the gate latch became a moving meditation, a continuous affirmation of his commitment. The humble oath transformed an ordinary citizen into a temporary guardian, dedicated to the slow tides of the night. It was a promise that allowed the community to surrender to slumber, trusting in the vigilance of the men who quietly walked the darkness. The assurance that someone was awake sober and steadily completing their round was the foundation of the town's peaceful rest. The nightly routine of the town watch began in a sheltered place of organized stillness, the watchhouse hearth. This small, humble structure served as the organizational core, the place where the day's scattered citizens transformed into a cohesive unit of night guardians bonded by the low embers of the central fire. Imagine the watchhouse as a sturdy, simple building, often located near the main gate or the central marketplace. As the final evening bell faded, the designated watchman would gather inside. The air was cool, carrying the scent of damp wool and old leather, but the center of the room radiated a comforting, warm breath. The hearth was the soul of the watchhouse. The fire was never allowed to burn high or aggressively. It was tended down to a state of low embers, a deep, constant bed of glowing coal that provided steady, predictable heat without the danger of sparks. This contained warmth was vital for the men who would soon be facing the chill of the distant night and the soft wind moving through the streets. The atmosphere in the watchhouse was one of calm organization. There were no sharp commands or hurried movements. The master watchman, the supervisor for the night, would quietly check the readiness of his crew. This was the moment for the gentle handover of tools, the soft clicking of the lantern latches, and the settling of the final instructions. The gathering around the hearth was a moment of social cohesion that reinforced the importance of the rhythmic consistency required for the long hours ahead. The men shared a moment of quiet camaraderie, perhaps drinking a warm, simple beverage or sharing a final piece of bread. This shared ritual helped settle any lingering stress from the day, ensuring the mind was ready to focus on the peaceful, predictable task of vigilance. The light in the watchhouse was soft and natural, provided by the lantern glow and the deep red pulse of the low embers. The shadows stretched long and relaxed, emphasizing the sense of shelter and security before venturing out onto the unlit streets. The soundscape was minimal, and the occasional shift of wood in the hearth and the soft murmur of low voices and the rhythmic sound of a watchman testing his staff against the quiet stone floor. This warm breath of gathering served a practical logistical purpose. It was the staging point for the night's patrol routes. The master watchman would outline the specific sectors, ensuring that the entire town was covered by the watchman's gentle footsteps. The goal was not to overlap or rush, but to establish a system of continuous, organized stillness, guaranteeing that the sound of the watchman's voice calling the hour would eventually reach every sleeping household. The watchhouse hearth was the physical representation of the town's commitment to safety, a contained, warm center of order that pushed back against the vast, cold unpredictability of the night. It was the first act of the quiet routine, preparing the guardians to become the soft anchor for the sleeping community. The nightly guardians relied upon two simple primary instruments to carry out their duty: the lantern glow and the soft stick. These were not tools of aggression, but instruments of visibility, sound, and low-drama organization perfectly suited for maintaining the quiet routine of the distant night. Imagine the watchman preparing to step out of the warm shelter of the watchhouse. His first companion is the lantern, typically made of horn or thin oiled linen stretched over a wooden frame. The lantern held a small steady flame, a rushlight or small wick, burning oil or tallow. This flame provided a contained gentle light that traveled with the watchman. The lantern glow was essential for the primary duty of fire prevention. It allowed the watchman to peer into shadowed alleyways and check the security of chimneys and banked hearths, ensuring no stray low embers threatened the wooden town. The light was also a calm deterrent. Its slow, steady movement through the streets signaled to anyone awake that the organized vigilance was present and moving, encouraging stillness. The light was a beacon of predictable order in the profound darkness. The lantern's presence was often acoustic as well as visual. The flame, shielded from the soft wind, would cast a flickering pattern on the quiet stone of the buildings, The gentle creak of the lantern's handle or frame added a subtle rhythmic sound to the watchman's approach. The second primary instrument was the soft stick or staff. This wooden pole, often 5 or 6 feet long, was rarely used as a weapon. Its true function was acoustic. It was the source of the gentle footsteps and rhythmic cadence that announced the watchman's presence. The stick would be struck against the cobblestones or pavement at regular intervals, a rhythmic tap-tap-tap that served as an acoustic anchor for the sleeping community. The sound was distinct, easily recognizable, and profoundly reassuring. It told the people tucked safely in their homes that the hour was being marked and that the peace was being maintained. This repetitive hypnotic sound was an eternal lullaby imposed upon the silence. Beyond the staff's acoustic role, it served as a tool for gentle interaction. The watchman might use it to tap softly on the shutter of a shop that was not fully closed or to guide himself through a particularly dark or misty street. It was an extension of his senses used for organized probing and quiet checks rather than forceful action. The simplicity of these tools was key to the watch's effectiveness. They required no complex maintenance, only a fresh wick and a steady hand. They embodied the watchman's promise to be present, to illuminate the danger, and to maintain the steady pace of order through the night. The lantern's drifting light and the staff's soft rhythm were the gentle means by which the nightly guardians ensured the community's unwavering peace. Before the patrol teams dispersed into the cold silence of the town, they received their final directives from the master watchman. This moment was marked by calm instructions, ensuring every member understood their sector, their route, and their maps of the midnight streets. This organization was critical for maintaining the rhythmic consistency and unbroken vigilance required until dawn. Imagine the master watchman standing by the low embers of the hearth, a faint lantern glow illuminating a simple plan of the town. This map was not a highly detailed drawing, but a mental representation, a clear organized sequence of checkpoints, important intersections, and known vulnerabilities, such as the largest storehouses or the most crowded lanes of wooden houses. The instruction was never delivered with urgency, but with a steady pace and emphasis on patient observation. The master watchman's voice was a low murmur, detailing the boundaries. The first quadrant from the baker's lane to the river wharf. Your pace must not quicken, and you must call the full hour at the north post. The key to their success was the division of labor. The town was partitioned into distinct, manageable sectors, ensuring that the gentle footsteps of the watchman created a net of security that covered every residential and commercial space. Each watchman was responsible for a specific predictable route, which he would walk multiple times through the distant night. This repetition of the known route created a profound sense of organized predictability for both the watchman and the sleeping town. The instructions emphasized the primary duties checking the security of the town's containment. This involved verifying that the heavy main gates were secure, that the smaller postern doors used for foot traffic were barred, and that the defensive walls of quiet stone were free from any disturbance. This work transformed the watchman from a simple walker into a guardian of the town's defined safe boundaries. Another vital instruction concerned the acoustic responsibility. The master watchman ensured that the calling of the hours was synchronized. Each watchman was responsible for calling the time clearly and steadily as he passed his designated checkpoint, ensuring that the sound was carried by the soft wind to the next sector's watchman, who would then take up the call. This coordination transformed the scattered patrols into a single unified audible system, the acoustic anchor of the night. Any potential disruptions were discussed as low-drama scenarios, a reminder to use the soft stick to tap a closed door, not to forcefully confront, and to always rely on the calm authority of their official presence. Their goal was prevention through visibility and sound, not resolution through conflict. The maps of the midnight streets were imprinted on the watchmen's minds, allowing them to move through the deepest darkness with confidence and rhythmic consistency. This organized formation, built on clear communication and defined roles, was the vital stage that ensured the long, quiet walk ahead would be a continuous, unwavering imposition of order upon the sleeping world. The long, deep silence between the closing of the gates and the dawn was not a single stretch of darkness. It was meticulously divided into the four quarters, a system that ensured the vigilance of the patrol remained constant and fresh through a deliberate, rhythmic shift. This organization of time was essential for the low-drama efficiency of the nightly watch. Imagine the night as a vast, smooth circle sliced into four manageable segments. Each quarter, typically 3 hours long, carried a different name and a slightly different quality of silence. This division provided a predictable structure for the watchmen, ensuring that no single individual was overwhelmed by the immense stretch of the distant night. The first quarter began when the last lantern glow of the curfew faded. This period was characterized by the final settling of the town, and the last sounds of movement retreating into the homes, and the transition from low embers in the hearths to true domestic silence. The initial patrol during this time was focused on confirming the security of doors and the safety of the banked fires, acting as a final filter against the day's residue. The transition to the second quarter near midnight was often the quietest and coldest part of the night. This was the time of profound stillness, where the mist-plucked moonlight reigned supreme over the empty streets. The patrol during this quarter was often the most solitary and sustained, requiring deep patience and rhythmic consistency from the watchman. It was during this time that the sense of being an acoustic anchor for the sleeping town was strongest. The third quarter marked the psychological midpoint, the time when the watchmen would be most fatigued. This was often the moment for the quiet exchange of vigilance, the subtle rotation of personnel, or the shift change at the central watchhouse. This organized rotation was critical, recognizing that human vigilance needs to be refreshed to maintain unwavering order. The duty shifted hands with minimal fuss, ensuring the security net remained unbroken. Finally, the fourth quarter carried the subtle promise of the returning sun. The darkness began to soften, and the watchman's focus shifted from security to anticipating the dawn. The calls announcing the hours during this quarter were often clearer and louder, acting as the gentle signal for certain early rising artisans or bakers to begin their day. The rhythmic shift of the four quarters was orchestrated by the tolling of the central tower bell, or by the synchronized calls of the watchmen themselves. The acoustic marking of these shifts provided a predictable structure for everyone in the town, asleep or awake. The knowledge that the night was measured, accounted for, and governed by a continuous organized routine was the deepest source of comfort for the community. This meticulous dividing of the night was a powerful act of low-drama organization, turning the vast, unknown territory of darkness into a sequence of manageable, predictable steps, ensuring that the gentle footsteps of the watch maintained their steady pace until the light returned. The watchman's preparation for the long hours of the distant night was completed by donning the soft uniform clothing that was designed not for striking appearance, but for practical comfort, relying on wool leather and protection from the cold. This simple attire was essential for maintaining the steady pace and sustained vigilance of the patrol. Imagine the men in the watchhouse dressing by the fading warmth of the low embers. Their garments were simple, functional, and warm, designed to provide a layer of quiet defense against the pervasive cold and the dampness carried by the soft wind. The primary material was wool. Thick, durable wool tunics and cloaks were vital for retaining the body's warm breath. Wool, a natural fiber, had the gentle property of insulating, even when slightly damp, a necessary defense against the mist, moonlight, that often settled in the narrow streets during the deepest hours. The layers of soft wool ensured that the watchman's focus remained on his duty, not on the distraction of shivering. Leather was the second essential component. Sturdy leather belts, often used to carry the simple tools, the lantern, and the soft stick, provided support and organizational efficiency. More importantly, heavy leather boots protected the feet. The watchman's duty was one of continuous movement. and the quality of his boots determined his ability to maintain the required rhythmic consistency. The leather worn and softened by use allowed for gentle footsteps on the rough, quiet stone of the cobblestones. The uniform carried minimal decoration. Its significance was entirely tied to its function to designate the wearer as a figure of calm authority and to provide practical comfort. The color palette was usually muted dark browns, grays, or deep blues colors that absorbed the drifting light and allowed the watchman to blend into the shadows, making his presence felt through sound and the staff rather than bright, unsettling visibility. A subtle yet important piece of the uniform was the hood or cap. This headwear was essential for trapping heat, but it also served to frame the face, focusing the watchman's patient observation as he peered down dark alleys or into the unlit interiors of shops. This simple, soft uniform was a tool of low-drama survival. It recognized the challenge of maintaining alertness over the course of the long, silent night. By ensuring the watchman was physically comfortable and protected from the elements, the uniform allowed his mind to remain clear-focused entirely on the organized vigilance of the town. When the watchman finally stepped out onto the cold streets, his warm woolen clothing and sturdy leather boots were his first line of defense, allowing him to become the acoustic anchor of the night, without unnecessary friction or hardship. He was a figure of quiet determination, clothed in the materials of the land, ready to walk his measured rounds until the dawn. The watchman's duty became active and acoustic as he began his rounds. One of the primary continuous tasks on the first circuits was the sealing of the shops and quiet doors, an act of methodical security often accompanied by the distinct rattle of the keys. Imagine the watchman beginning his slow, measured pace along the main commercial streets. The air is cool, and the lantern glow casts long dancing shadows. While the homeowners secured their own doors, many shops and official storehouses required a final formal check by the town's guardian. The sound of the keys was central to this ritual. The watchman often carried a large ring of keys, heavy cold iron representing the communal trust placed in him. As he walked, the keys would make a gentle, rhythmic clinking sound, a subtle, soft music that was part of his overall acoustic presence. This sound was one of low-drama organization, assuring the sleeping merchants that their property was being actively monitored. The watchman's gentle footsteps would pause at each commercial entrance. His first duty was to physically verify that the heavy wooden shutters were tightly drawn and latched. He would run his hand along the quiet stone of the doorway, feeling for any loose latch or unsecured bolt. The action was one of patient precision, a quiet, tactile confirmation of the town's security. In some larger towns, particularly near valuable storehouses, the watchman was tasked with applying an official seal or a final massive lock after the merchant had departed. The insertion of the large key into the heavy lock, the slow, deliberate turn, and the final thunk of the bolt shooting home was a final, reassuring sound of contained calm. The watchman then gently tugged the door or shutter to confirm the seal held, completing the quiet ritual. This task of sealing the shops was essential for maintaining the organized stillness of the night. It prevented petty disturbances and ensured that the town's communal wealth was protected. The watchman was, in this sense, a silent, temporary custodian of the town's daytime efforts, guarding the fruits of the day until the light returned. The patrol also involved checking the quiet doors of ordinary homes, not to intrude, but to ensure that domestic security was sound. If a door was found slightly ajar, or a shutter was flapping softly in the soft wind, the watchman's responsibility was to use his soft stick to tap lightly, waking the resident with a soft whisper of warning, allowing them to secure their home without alarm. The rattle of the keys and the accompanying gentle footsteps were a sound that moved through the silent streets with rhythmic consistency. It was a continuous, quiet promise of unwavering order, ensuring that the vulnerable parts of the town were locked down and protected, allowing the distant night to remain peaceful and predictable until the morning bells began their slow return. The most defining characteristic of the nightly watch was their measured pace of the patrol, a commitment to slowness and rhythmic consistency. The sound of the watchman's gentle footsteps on cobblestone was the very essence of the town's nightly security, a sound designed to soothe rather than startle. Imagine the watchman now moving along his assigned route. His speed is deliberately unhurried. He is not running to an emergency, but walking a long meditative circuit. This slow, steady pace was essential for two reasons: efficiency and vigilance. Rushing would lead to exhaustion and carelessness. The sustained, predictable rhythm ensured he could maintain alert focus for hours on end. The cobblestones beneath his feet acted as a kind of acoustic amplifier, turning his movements into a subtle, rhythmic presence. His sturdy leather boots, softened by use, made a distinct, continuous sound, a clip-clop, that traveled clearly through the empty, echoing halls of the street. This sound, blended with the tap of his soft stick, was the continuous low-drama announcement of his presence. The rhythmic nature of the walk was a tool for the watchman himself. It became a moving meditation, helping to ward off the deep silence and the chilling effects of the distant night. The predictability of his own motion kept his mind anchored, and his senses sharp, focused on the soft wind and any sound that deviated from the expected nightly quiet. The quality of the gentle footsteps was key to the promise of the watch. They were firm enough to be heard, yet careful enough not to be mistaken for the hurried movement of a disturbance. The sound was a soft whisper of authority, confirming to any anxious resident tucked behind their wooden shutters that the organized vigilance was passing by exactly as expected. The patrol's movement was often guided by the lantern glow, which moved slowly along the quiet stone walls of the buildings. The light did not illuminate the entire street, but created small, defined pools of light around the watchman, making him a visible, reassuring point of unwavering order in the vast darkness. His warm breath would appear in soft clouds on a cold night, emphasizing the human protective presence moving through the cold air. This contrast, the vulnerability of the human body against the cold, and the unwavering commitment to the scheduled pace, underscores the watchman's quiet dedication. The measured pace of the patrol was a civic commitment to time itself. It transformed the unpredictable flow of the hours into a structured, manageable progression. The gentle footsteps on cobblestone were the sound of the town trusting in its own system, allowing the deep, restful, slow tides of sleep to settle over the entire community, safe in the knowledge that the night was measured, watched, and quietly contained. The most crucial repetitive element of the watchman's quiet routine was the calling of the hours. His voice, steady and clear, moving through the empty streets, was intended to act as a soothing anchor, transforming the vast, unknown expanse of the distant night into a predictable, manageable sequence of time. Imagine the watchman pausing at his designated post, perhaps an open square or a recognizable landmark of quiet stone. He lifts his soft stick, strikes the ground once, twice, 3 times. And then, after taking a deep, warm breath, he calls out the hour. The phrase was simple, often something like, "Past 10 o'clock and all is well." This call was not meant to be loud or startling, but clear and resonant, allowing the sound to travel through the soft wind and the echoing halls without breaking the essential sleep of the community. The volume was carefully measured just loud enough to reach the next sector, confirming the time to the other patrolling watchmen, and assuring the sleeping residents that the organized vigilance remained unbroken. The function of the call was acoustic reassurance. For a society without widespread clocks, the watchman's voice was the reliable external measure of time. A resident stirring in the dark could hear the call and immediately gain a sense of calm predictability. The fact that the watchman reported "all is well" was a quiet, direct promise that the primary threats, fire, and major disturbance were contained, allowing the person to surrender back to their deep slumber. The watchman's voice therefore became intrinsically linked to safety and unwavering order. It was a sound that dissolved the quiet fear of the dark, replacing it with the rhythmic consistency of human presence. The call was a continuous spoken oath, reaffirming the town's commitment to low-drama peace. As the hours deepened into the second quarter, the calls became more solitary and sustained. The only light might be the faint mist, pale moonlight, and the silence between the calls would stretch vast and immense. The watchman, alone with his lantern glow, used the call as a tool for his own focus, the sound of his own warm breath returning to him as an echo confirming his wakefulness and his commitment to his measured pace. The act of calling the hours linked the community in a shared acoustic experience of time. Every resident, from the poorest artisan to the wealthiest merchant, relied on that shared sound to mark the slow progression towards dawn. It was an eternal lullaby imposed upon the night, guaranteeing that even when the town was at its most vulnerable, it was still under the careful scheduled surveillance of its guardians. The watchman's voice was his greatest, simplest tool, a human sound that acted as a continuous soft anchor in the deep, vast silence. As the watchman moved through the deep stillness of the distant night, his duty was guided by the soundscape, a quiet, subtle composition of sounds that affirmed the town's security or alerted him to a gentle deviation from the unwavering order. The prevailing sound of the sleeping town was deep silence broken only by the natural, predictable elements. The soft wind would rustle through the thatch roofs and gently move the canvas signs over the shop doors. High above, the only continuous natural sound might be the quiet murmur of the slow tides of the nearby river, or the faint cry of a night bird. The watchman listened to this natural rhythm as a baseline for calm equilibrium. Within this natural silence, the watchman trained his ears for the sounds of domestic calm. He listened for the soft, continuous warm breath of the sleeping townspeople, the muted snoring from behind wooden shutters, the quiet creak of a settled floorboard, or the gentle sigh of a resting animal in a nearby stable. These sounds were reassuring, confirming that the town was safely contained and resting under the protection of his gentle footsteps. His vigilance, however, focused on deviations, sounds that suggested a subtle friction in the nightly order. The most crucial sound he listened for was the faint, unpredictable crackle of distant fires. A small, dry snap that was not the sound of a settled hearth, but of wood catching fire, could signal the beginning of a disaster. The watchman's patient observation was acoustic. He would pause his own rhythmic consistency, holding his own breath to pinpoint the direction of the anomaly. The sound of fire, even from a distance, was a soft whisper that demanded immediate methodical action. The watchman would not raise a loud alarm immediately, but would move with speed and calm authority towards the source, using his lantern glow to confirm the threat before raising the necessary structured signal. He also listened for muted murmurs, the faint, unexpected sound of human voices when there should be none. This might be the low conversation of a late traveler seeking entry at a postern gate, or the suppressed sound of minor discord from a shadowed corner. These were not usually sounds of great danger, but signs of low drama interruption that required his presence to gently contain and dissolve. The watchman would simply approach, letting the sound of his staff and his voice calling the hours act as the natural deterrent, usually causing the murmurs to cease. The soundscape was constantly being shaped by the watchman himself. His own tap-tap-tap of the soft stick and his clear voice acted as acoustic boundaries, pushing the silence away and establishing the perimeter of organized vigilance. The soundscape of the sleeping town was the ultimate measure of the watchman's success. It was a space where the rhythm of human life had retreated, allowing the soft sounds of nature and the gentle echoes of quiet stone to dominate, all overseen by the continuous soothing anchor of the patrol's acoustic presence. As the watchman continued his early rounds, his primary and most persistent concern was fire. This steady duty translated into a simple, repetitive ritual, checking the water buckets. This was the core of the watch's low-drama organization, focusing on prevention and immediate readiness against the silent threat of fire. Imagine the watchman pausing at the entryway of a wealthy merchant's home or a municipal building. Hung prominently near the door would be a set of heavy leather buckets specifically designated for use against fire. These buckets represented the community's first line of defense, and the watchman's task was to ensure they were full and accessible. His approach was methodical and unhurried. He would use his lantern glow to inspect the buckets, checking for tears or leaks in the leather and ensuring they were filled to the brim with water. This tactile check was performed with patient precision. In the stillness of the distant night, the sound of the water softly sloshing as he gently confirmed the fullness was a reassuring sound of preparedness. This duty was crucial because, as we recall, the medieval town was a flammable tapestry of wood and thatch. A small, unattended low embers could quickly escalate. The watchman knew that in the event of a fire, the first few minutes were everything. His job was to guarantee that the resources for that initial frantic effort were immediately available, turning a chaotic moment into one of organized response. The repeated action of checking the water buckets throughout his sector gave the watchman a profound sense of rhythmic consistency. This simple physical check provided a tangible confirmation of the town's safety. The routine was an anchor grounding his mind in the practical, necessary reality of his role. In some areas, particularly near bakeries or smithies where the low embers were hotter and more persistent, the watchman's inspection was even more meticulous. He might peer into the chimney stacks with his lantern glow, checking for undue heat, or place his hand on the quiet stone of an oven exterior to ensure the temperature was safely declining. This soft probing was done with deep respect for the sleeping household, prioritizing security without intrusion. The requirement for householders to maintain these full buckets was a civic regulation, and the watchman was the quiet enforcer. His rounds ensured that this system was not forgotten during the ease of the daylight hours. His gentle footsteps and the soft whisper of his moving presence were a continuous reminder of the night's vulnerability. Fire safety was the unsung continuous commitment of the town watch, defining their unwavering order more than any attempt to catch a petty criminal. The checking of the water buckets was the small repetitive act that guaranteed the town would wake up to the same predictable community it had left to sleep. The smooth, rhythmic execution of this task ensured the community could surrender fully to the slow tides of slumber. As the night deepened and the tower bell tolled the full hour of midnight, the watch often experienced a subtle, profound turning point in the midnight shift. This was a moment of quiet exchange, of vigilance, where the immense responsibility for the sleeping town passed from one set of warm breath to another, maintaining the rhythmic consistency of order. Imagine the transition occurring at the watch house hearth, or perhaps at a fixed post near the main market square. The outgoing watchman, weary from the gentle footsteps of his long rounds, meets the incoming team who are now fresh from their sleep and ready to face the deep silence of the distant night. This exchange was conducted with low-drama organization. There was no need for loud reporting or hurried action. The outgoing watchman would simply pass on the essential intelligence. The fires are banked, the south gate is secure, and the wind is high near the river wharf. This information was transferred in a soft whisper, ensuring the continuity of knowledge without disturbing the profound stillness of the surrounding town. The physical act of the exchange centered on the simple tools of the trade. The outgoing watchman would relinquish his ring of keys, the reassuring rattle of the keys, and the heavy staff transferring the tangible symbols of his sworn authority. The lantern glow, now dim and covered in a film of ancient dust, would be quietly swapped for a freshly prepared lantern, ensuring the new patrol had clear, bright light for their rounds. This rhythmic shift was a key to the watch's endurance. It acknowledged the human need for rest while prioritizing the town's need for unwavering order. The system was designed to prevent the vigilance from ever wavering due to fatigue, turning the immense stretch of the night into a series of manageable, refreshed segments. The incoming watchman's gentle footsteps would immediately take up the measured pace of the patrol. As he moved out into the street, his rhythm was a conscious continuation of the one just completed. The sound of his soft stick striking the quiet stone would blend with the fading echoes of his predecessor, creating an unbroken acoustic anchor for the sleeping community. The experience of the outgoing watchman was one of safe release. He could return to the watchhouse hearth, where the low embers offered comforting warmth, knowing that his humble oath had been fulfilled and the quiet peace of the town had been passed into capable hands. His rest was earned by the knowledge that the town remained safe under the continuous, organized vigilance. The midnight shift was a turning point that affirmed the power of the system over the individual. It ensured that the town watch was an enduring, continuous force, capable of maintaining its steady duty from the settling of the evening until the first soft light of the dawn. In the deepest, quietest hours of the night, often during the second quarter when the distant night settled into its most profound silence, the watchman's routine included the watchtower ascent. This movement was a significant turning point, providing a shift in both physical elevation and mental perspective, allowing the watchman to gain a comprehensive, calm perspective over the town bathed in the mist-pulsed moonlight. Imagine the tower, a sturdy vertical structure built of quiet stone, often incorporated into the town wall or standing near the central square. The ascent was slow and deliberate, a movement of gentle footsteps on worn circular stairs. The sound was minimal, confined to the soft scrape of leather on stone and the watchman's own warm breath as he steadily climbed. The tower served as the highest point of the town's organized vigilance. From this elevation, the watchman could see beyond the immediate narrow confines of the streets to the entire pattern of the sleeping community. The lantern glow that had been a small, contained light at street level now merged with the vast, pale light filtering down from the moon. From the top, the town below appeared as a dark, irregular mosaic of rooftops, organized and contained within the hard, strong line of the wall. This height provided an essential low-drama perspective on the threats of the night. The watchman could visually confirm that the low embers in the banked hearths were not producing unexpected smoke plumes. He could check that the entire perimeter, including the gates, lay in a state of unwavering order. The scene was often ethereal, defined by the mist, pulsed moonlight. Thin, low-lying mist might cloak the river or settle softly over the open marketplace, lending the scene a sense of deep, serene visuals. The moonlight diffused and soft illuminated the pattern of the streets, allowing the watchman to trace his planned route and confirm the predictable placement of the main structures. This elevated vantage point reinforced the watchman's role as the soft anchor. He was the single wakeful eye overseeing the entire slumbering body of the town. This comprehensive view helped dissolve any anxiety accumulated from patrolling the narrow, shadowed alleys. From here, the town was a whole contained and manageable unit. After a period of patient observation from the tower top, checking the four directions and listening to the absolute silence, the watchman would make his call, the acoustic anchor of the hour, and then begin his slow descent. The rhythm of the climb and the time spent at the top was integrated into his rhythmic consistency, ensuring that the town's security was confirmed vertically as well as horizontally. The watchtower ascent was a quiet, necessary ritual that balanced the intimacy of the street patrol with the grandeur of the town's overall structure. It gave the watchman, and through his call, the community the assurance that the night's order was vast, organized, and complete, preparing them for the deep silence of the hours ahead. The primary duty of the watch was to maintain rhythmic consistency. Yet, their role occasionally included a gentle interruption, small, non-dramatic actions that addressed minor issues to keep the town's nightly order unbroken. These moments involved tasks like mending a gate or quietly relieving a distress, transforming potential friction into low-drama peace. Imagine the watchman on his rounds during the deepest hours, his lantern glow falling upon a side gate leading to the town square. He finds the heavy wooden latch has been nudged open, allowing the soft wind to move too freely, or perhaps the hinge has quietly slipped from its mooring. This is not a sign of intrusion, but of material fatigue. The watchman's response is one of calm authority and immediate practical attention. He would set down his soft stick and his lantern, and using the simple, readily available tools often carried on his belt, he would gently manipulate the latch back into place or secure the hinge with a piece of strong rope or leather thong. The sound of this work was minimal. The soft scrape of wood against quiet stone, the careful thud of a piece settling, all performed with patient precision. This act of mending a gate ensured that the town's contained calm was instantly restored. He didn't have to raise an alarm or call for help. His duty was to be the immediate, self-sufficient solver of small, predictable problems, preventing them from escalating into larger worries that might disturb the community's slumber. Another form of gentle interruption involved quietly relieving a distress. This might be encountering a late traveler missed by the gate closure who required soft guidance to a legitimate lodging outside the walls, or a resident who had fallen ill and needed a simple message carried to a neighboring house or the town's designated healer. In these moments, the watchman's warm breath and steady voice were his most important tools. He approached the distressed person with a measured pace, offering reassurance that the organized vigilance was present. He would speak in a soft whisper, ensuring the disturbance remained contained within the immediate area, dissolving the anxiety without creating unnecessary noise or disruption for the sleeping homes nearby. The interaction was brief, focusing entirely on a predictable, calm resolution. The watchman's purpose was to restore the unwavering order, not to introduce conflict. By quickly providing a simple solution, a direction, a gentle escort, or a quiet communication, he ensured that the town could settle back into its profound stillness. These small acts of service, performed alone under the mist, Pot's moonlight, were integral to the humble oath of the watchman. They proved that true security is less about dramatic confrontation and more about the continuous rhythmic consistency of attention and the willingness to pause the patrol's gentle footsteps to attend to the small frictions of the distant night. He was the active, serene filter, keeping the peace intact, one quiet act at a time. As the watchman continued his lonely, measured pace through the deepest hours, his rounds would often take him past the most massive structure in the town. On the cathedral. This structure, built of heavy, quiet stone, was a significant turning point in the nightly patrol, offering a space of immense, organized quietness. The calm of great stone. Imagine the watchman approaching the vast edifice. The air around the cathedral often felt cooler and heavier as the immense stone mass radiated the cold of the distant night. The building's silence was absolute, a profound contrast to the softer domestic sounds of the wooden homes he usually patrolled. The cathedral was a symbol of the town's unwavering order, and its security was vital. The watchman's duties here were specific and often involved a careful, slow walk around the entire perimeter. He would use his lantern glow to check the heavy iron-bound doors, verifying that the massive latches were secure. His gentle footsteps on the flagstones of the cathedral square were the only sound breaking the deep, geometric stillness. The architecture itself spoke of low-drama permanence. The thick stone walls, high arches, and deep-set windows were impervious to fire, the watchman's primary concern. The focus shifted from fire prevention to the integrity of the structure's physical boundaries. The watchman would peer into the shadows of the buttresses, ensuring that only the mist plus moonlight occupied the space. When the watchman's path took him near the main entrance, he might pause, listening to the vast, echoing halls within. The interior, though dark, held a profound, organized quiet. The silence was so deep that it felt active, a silent testament to centuries of rhythmic consistency and devotion. Any sound that the watchman made, the soft tap of his soft stick, would be swallowed by the great stone space, only to return as a muted, harmless echo. The visit to the cathedral was a moment of profound stillness in the watchman's long journey. It provided a visual and spatial reference point that reaffirmed the town's grounded identity. The presence of the massive, unmoving stone structure aligned along its own sacred axis reinforced the feeling that the watchman's humble oath was part of a larger eternal order. The watchman standing beneath the great stone tower would sometimes make his call here the acoustic anchor of the hour. The sound, amplified by the vast, open space of the square, would travel far, carried by the soft wind across the sleeping rooftops. This call from the heart of the town's spiritual structure was particularly resonant, assuring the residents that the highest order was awake and vigilant. This quiet pause at the calm of Great Stone served to recenter the watchman, preparing him for the rest of his solitary rounds. It was a reminder that the peace he sought to maintain was not fragile, but built upon deep, organized, and patient stability, much like the massive stones of the cathedral itself. The watchman's circuits often included the boundary where the solid ground of the town met the flowing boundary of the water, the river wharf, or the canal bank. This point of transition was a significant turning point in the round, as the patrol meets the river, exchanging the quiet density of the streets for the vast open serenity of water. Imagine the watchman leaving the narrow, high-walled streets and stepping onto the open, wide stone of the wharf. The air immediately feels different, cooler, damper, and carrying the soft wind and the faint, earthy smell of the slow river. The soundscape changes profoundly. The echoing halls of the street give way to the low, continuous lap-lap of the water against the pilings. The river was a point of vulnerability and opportunity, requiring specific organized vigilance. The watchman's primary duty here was to check the moorings and the safety of the boats docked along the bank. He would use his lantern glow to inspect the thick, damp ropes, ensuring they were secure, and that no one was attempting to slip away under the cover of the distant night. This was a low-drama security check, a rhythmic inspection of the knots and the gentle rise and fall of the small craft. The river itself was a symbol of unwavering order through its slow tides. The water level, predictable in its flow, offered a profound sense of calm equilibrium to the watchman. The moon, often obscured by the close rooftops, was now visible, casting a shimmering pale line across the water's surface, the mist pull moonlight, reflecting the sky's vastness. The watchman might pause here for a moment of profound stillness. Standing beside the water, watching the drifting light of the stars reflected in the dark surface, offered a mental respite from the enclosed pressure of the town walls. The river's continuous soft murmur was a natural eternal lullaby, reminding him that the organized chaos of the human day was dwarfed by the immense quiet power of the natural world. This section of the patrol required gentle footsteps, not on cobblestone, but often on large, smooth, quiet stone flagstones polished by centuries of loading and unloading. His warm breath would appear in soft clouds as he peered out over the water, his patient observation extending to the distant dark bank. The river was often considered a natural gate of the town, one that required constant acoustic and visual monitoring. If the town had water-powered mills, the watchman would check the simple massive water wheel, ensuring it was still or moving with its expected rhythmic consistency. The mill house, warm from the day's activity, was another potential fire risk, requiring a careful check for low embers. The patrol meets the river was a necessary punctuation mark in the nightly round. It was the furthest edge of the town's contained calm, where the man-made order dissolved into the natural serenity of water. This brief encounter with the flowing element refreshed the watchman's mind, preparing him for the long, slow return through the intricate web of streets. As the night progressed beyond the deepest hours, the watchman entered a profound turning point, the time of anticipating the dawn. This period, often falling within the fourth and final quarter, was marked by a gradual, subtle shift in light and sound, signaled by the fainting of the lantern glow. Imagine the watchman completing his rounds as the distant night begins to subtly relinquish its hold. High above, the moonlight may still be visible, but close to the horizon, a faint pale grayness begins to emerge, softening the sharp, dark edges of the world. The most noticeable change is in the lantern glow. The flame that had been a bright, crucial beacon through the blackness now seems subdued, its light absorbed by the subtle growing luminosity of the atmosphere. The watchman relies less on the light to find his way, and more on his memory of the maps of the midnight streets and the rhythmic consistency of his gentle footsteps. This shift was a quiet confirmation of his success. The low-drama organization of the night had held, and the threat of fire and disruption was receding with the darkness. The watchman's pace, while still measured, carried a new sense of purpose, the final countdown to the successful completion of his humble oath. The soundscape also began its slow, gentle transition. The echoing halls were still, but now the watchman could hear the earliest soft sounds of the waking world. These were not the hurried noises of the day, but the muted murmurs of the most dedicated artisans, the baker beginning to stoke his oven, or the blacksmith preparing his low embers. These sounds were welcome, confirming that the productive cycle of the town was safely resuming. The watchman's job in this phase was one of patient observation and preparation. He ensured that his final checks were meticulous, the main gates were secure, and the perimeter walls of quiet stone were intact. He acted as the last firm barrier between the night's containment and the open activity of the day. The feeling of the soft wind often changed in the moments before dawn, carrying a cool, clean scent that symbolized the purification of the night. The watchman would feel the deep silence slowly giving way to a hopeful stillness where the darkness was no longer absolute, but a memory. The fainting of the lantern glow was a visual metaphor for the end of the watch's authority. Their rule belonged to the absolute darkness, and as the natural light returned, their service was about to conclude. The time for organized vigilance was passing, yielding to the protective visibility of the sun. The watchman would maintain his steady pace, knowing that the final bell, the signal for the community to wake, was only a short, quiet distance away. The final decisive turning point of the night arrived not with a loud signal, but with the gentle growing brightness in the eastern sky, the sighting of the morning star's call. This astronomical event marked the beginning of the final round and preceded the wake-up bell, completing the night's cycle of organized vigilance. Imagine the watchman completing his last perimeter check of the walls of quiet stone. The air is crisp, the soft wind is cool, and the profound darkness has given way to a beautiful pale luminosity. The mist, Peck's moonlight, is fading, replaced by the solitary shimmering presence of the morning star, standing still and brilliant just above the horizon. This star was the ancient, reliable indicator that the night's duty was nearly done. Its appearance signaled that the primary threats of the deep cold, the confusion of absolute darkness, and the silent threat of fire were now safely mitigated. The watchman, seeing this light, received his final silent instruction from the cosmos to increase his pace slightly for the very last circuit. The final round was executed with a renewed sense of purpose, ensuring all sectors were confirmed safe before the town's productive life resumed. The watchman's gentle footsteps now carried him swiftly through his route, his lantern glow now almost entirely superfluous, serving only as a quiet, symbolic presence. He would make his final check of the main gates, confirming the heavy iron bars were secure for just a few moments longer. This final circuit culminated in the central square, or at the bell tower, where the watchman would deliver his final report to the master watchman. This low-drama handover was the successful conclusion of the midnight shift, confirming that the rhythmic consistency had been maintained throughout all 4 quarters of the night. Following this report, and synchronized with the sun's very first drifting light over the eastern rooftops, the most anticipated sound of the morning would begin the wake-up bell. This sound was the deliberate, loud, but reassuring final chord of the night's symphony. Unlike the muffled warning tone of the curfew bell, the wake-up bell was clear, strong, and continuous, signaling to the entire community that it was safe to open their doors and tend to their low embers for the day's tasks. The sound of the wake-up bell was a joyful sound of organized certainty. It reversed the earlier actions. The gates would slowly be unbarred and opened, allowing the slow flow of external traffic and activity to resume. The watchman's humble oath had been completely fulfilled. The morning star's call and the subsequent wake-up bell marked the peaceful return to light and activity. It was the final non-violent affirmation that the unwavering order of the watch had successfully contained the chaos of the dark. The watchman, weary but fulfilled, could now relinquish his soft stick and retreat for his own well-earned rest, having served as the soothing anchor for his community's night of slumber. With the sound of the wake-up bell fading into the morning air, the watchman's long night of vigilance drew to its final symbolic act, relinquishing the keys. This was the quiet handover of order, a measured ceremony that formally transferred the security of the town from the nocturnal watch back to the daytime administration. Imagine the watchman completing his final smooth circuit and returning to the town hall or the main gate. The early morning drifting light has fully replaced the lantern glow, and the air is filled with the hopeful, productive sounds of the town beginning its day, the creak of shutters opening, the soft thud of the baker kneading dough. He approaches the designated official, perhaps the town bailiff or a senior guild master, who now assumes the organized responsibility for the daytime hours. The exchange is conducted with low-drama efficiency. The watchman does not need to deliver a long, anxious report. His success is evident in the general sense of calm equilibrium that prevails in the town. The central moment is the transfer of the keys. The watchman carefully removes the large, heavy ring from his belt. The reassuring rattle of the keys, which had been a sound of organized vigilance throughout the distant night, now changes its meaning. It becomes a sound of completion and trust. The keys are placed directly into the hands of the daytime official, symbolizing the successful containment of the night's potential threats. This quiet handover was a crucial element of the town's administrative rhythm. It formalized the transition of authority, confirming that the humble oath of the watch had been fulfilled, and the perimeter, the gates, and the houses had been successfully maintained in a state of unwavering order. The official might briefly ask about any gentle interruption encountered, a secured door, a relieved distress, or any unusual presence. The watchman's responses are brief, focusing on the resolution and the continuous low-drama peace that he maintained. His account is not one of conflict, but of rhythmic consistency. Having surrendered the keys, the watchman now sheds the tools of his night duty. He hangs his soft uniform and his soft stick in the watch house, returning to the status of an ordinary citizen. This is a moment of safe release from the intense solitary focus required during the deep hours. He is no longer the acoustic anchor of the town, but a person seeking his own well-earned rest. The legacy of this moment is the affirmation of organized predictability. The community knew with absolute certainty that the keys would be relinquished and the gates would open at dawn, allowing the daily slow flow of commerce and life to resume. The watchman, through this final ritual, confirms that the night was measured, accounted for, and safely contained. He steps out into the morning streets, now filled with the sound of gentle footsteps and activity. He can now rest knowing that his long, deliberate walk has guaranteed the continuity of the town's peace. As the watchman retreated for his rest, the true enduring influence of his nightly routine settled over the community, the watch's gentle, enduring legacy. This legacy was not recorded in grand histories, but was subtly woven into the fabric of daily life, the profound ability to guarantee the sleep of a protected town. The most powerful trace left by the night watch was the creation of predictable safety. For centuries, the rhythmic consistency of their patrol, the measured pace, and the clear calling of the hours established a deep, subconscious trust in the community. Residents knew with absolute certainty that between the closing of the gates and the wake-up bell, a continuous, unwavering order was being actively maintained. Imagine the peace this instilled. The knowledge that the primary threats, the silent threat of fire and the confusion of the distant night, were being systematically monitored, allowed the townspeople to achieve a deeper, more restorative slumber. The watchman's acoustic presence acted as a continuous, soothing anchor, transforming the vulnerability of darkness into a state of organized stillness. This legacy of low-drama organization transcended mere crime prevention. It proved that community stability could be achieved through collective patience and methodical routine. The watch was a civilian community-run service, demonstrating that self-governance required self-discipline and a commitment to steady duty. The humble oath taken by the watchman became the foundation for the town's collective security and social cohesion. The architecture of the town itself carried the watch's legacy into the day. The quiet stone of the walls, the heavy doors, and the secure latches all spoke of the night's vigilance. Even the arrangement of fire buckets, though used during the day for water, was a constant visible reminder of the watchman's thorough checking of the water buckets under the lantern glow just hours before. The day inherited the safety structured by the night. Furthermore, the watch established the rhythm of rest that defined the medieval urban schedule. By imposing the curfew and opening the gates at fixed, predictable times, the watch system defined the periods of work and rest, contributing to the town's overall calm equilibrium. The entire flow of commerce and social life was regulated by the gentle structure imposed during the deep silence. In later centuries, as towns grew and the methods of policing evolved, the watchman's system was adopted, refined, and professionalized. The core principles fixed, beats regular rounds, and chronological record-keeping all trace their ancient roots back to the single watchman with his soft stick and his clear, measured voice. The modern concept of the beat is a direct, enduring echo of the watchman's specific assigned street circuit. The watch's gentle, enduring legacy is the memory of continuous human care, a quiet testament to the fact that peace is not a passive condition, but an active, gentle construction rebuilt every night with gentle footsteps and a warm breath. The town slept soundly, knowing that vigilance was awake, steady, and near. The final soft chapter of the town watch story belongs to the man himself, the watchman's rest. Having successfully executed his humble oath and ensured the quiet routine remained unbroken, he now sought his own peace, finding repose in the gentle, triumphant presence of the returning sun. Imagine the watchman now returning to his own home after the quiet handover of order was complete. The streets are active, filled with the energy of the morning, a contrast to the deep silence he has just guarded. He moves with a slow, steady pace, not because he is patrolling, but because his body is attuned to the rhythmic consistency of the night's measured walk. As he reaches his doorway, he carries with him the subtle, profound knowledge that he was the single conscious presence, maintaining unwavering order in the vast darkness. He was the acoustic anchor, whose voice provided calm predictability to thousands of sleeping souls. This quiet, deep fulfillment is the reward for his sustained effort. Inside his home, the light is bright and warm, and the light he helped safeguard. The low embers in his own hearth are gently stoked into a daytime fire, offering a final comforting warmth. He sheds the soft uniform, the heavy wool and sturdy leather, and prepares to surrender to the slow tides of slumber at the very time the rest of the world is awakening. The challenge for the watchman's rest is to reverse his internal clock, finding profound stillness while the town outside engages in its full daylight rhythm. His success is guaranteed by the knowledge that the town is safe, contained, and protected by the very structure he helped confirm. He can sleep without the quiet fear of the dark, because he knows he chased that fear away. As he lies down, the sounds of the day, the distant shouts of vendors, the gentle creak of carts, the soft wind carrying the sounds of commerce, become a soothing rhythmic backdrop, an eternal lullaby of normal life resuming. These are not sounds of danger. They are sounds of low-drama peace that affirm the success of his work. The returning sun is the final tangible proof of his service. Its drifting light fills the room, confirming that the long night has been successfully traversed. He closes his eyes, his breathing slowing to a deep, warm breath, finding his own rest in the same calm equilibrium he imposed upon the whole community. The watchman's rest is the final essential balance point of the entire system. It proves that the human body and mind, when organized with patience and dedication, can successfully overcome the natural challenge of the long, cold night, allowing the individual to find peace in the certainty that the gentle order endures. And now, as the watchman surrenders to his well-earned sleep, let the rhythm of his story guide you toward your own deep, protected rest. In this quiet journey tonight, we drifted through the gentle echoes of the quiet routine of the medieval town watch us study in nightly order from their earliest beginnings in the first curfew bell to the soft traces they leave behind as the foundation of public peace. Allow the thoughts of gentle footsteps, soft stick taps, and the soothing anchor of the watchman's voice to settle gently in your mind. There is no disruption in the night. There is only the slow, continuous flow of organized time. Feel the stability of the protective wall beneath your imagination, grounding you in quiet safety. If this peaceful journey brought you ease, you may leave a soft like, or whisper in the comments where you'd like to drift next. And now, let the night grow still. Let your breath slow. May sleep come softly and carry you into peaceful rest. Good night.